To continue this series of tracking the evolution of the stone tools through time and through different species, getting to the modern era. And last week we talked about the Mousterian technology, which is basically Neanderthal technology. Today we're going to talk about the early European H. sapiens arrival, and with them bringing a new stone tool technology. There's also contention that this technology was also used by Neanderthals, but it's still speculative. But we shall describe what this new technology consists of. As usual, the links are in the description. There's I linked a nice video in the description, which I recommend you guys going to watch, because it's nice. I linked a nice video because it's quite interesting. In fact, basically sums up this period. There's also other links which I haven't included because they cover the next phases, and I will just, I know we don't have to go ahead of ourselves now. Let's share the screen, and we shall start reading. This is from Anthropology, and it's the culture we're talking about is the Aurignacian culture. The Aurignacian is an upper Paleolithic or late Stone Age culture dating to between 34,000 and 27,000 years before the present BP. It can go back to around 40 or even later, depending on the place where you find the tools, and we shall be discussing where these tools are. The Aurignacian artifacts have long been considered representative of the culture of the first anatomically modern humans, H. sapiens, that migrated into the European continent, coming from Africa most likely, and via Western Asia. We know that they stayed in Western Asia and then also went east by around 65,000, or even later, or even earlier. I will speculate that they colonized the H. sapiens. Modern humans arrived in Australasia, which consists of Papua New Guinea and Australia, those two big islands. They will find earlier sites, but at the moment it's 65,000 years. So around the 50,000-ish years, modern humans arrived in Europe, and with them bringing this new technology. Some archaeologists argue that the Aurignacian artifacts may actually be a result of a acculturation, whereby mitigating population of anatomically modern humans were interacting with indigenous Neanderthal populations and producing what archaeologists recognize as the Aurignacian culture. That is why it is somewhat contentious still. There's evidence for both. That this new culture came as a result. That's why I said that they may have been Neanderthals may have also used this culture, this technology. So this basically it's new anyway. It could be the mixing of the Neanderthals with modern humans, or it could be just totally modern human technology that came into Europe. Now, the Aurignacian, sorry about that, artifacts it comes from Saint Auriga. Well, it comes from a site in France anyway. I can't pronounce it, I'm afraid. Sorry about that, guys. Which consists mainly of stone and bone tools, and reflects their technological capacity to produce parallel-sided stone blades and the ability to transform organic materials into stone tools. We also know that Neanderthals did that by transforming wooden artifacts into, obviously, spears, straighteners, etc. The new development is bone. and bone and other artifacts. Just so you guys want to see what he's talking about, side scrapers, stone parallel blades. Well, they're basically these. You have a whole variation of them. You have double-edged blades here. These long ones here, they're parallel. You have side scrapers, double-edged scrapers. You have burins, which I will go into what the burin is. The burins are these ones over here. These last three, if you guys can see the cursor, it is basically these three here. They are what burins are. Now, what is the burin? The Aurignacian Stone, including various tools like burins and end scrapers. What is in resharpened flakes? They were there. They were there here as well. They would be these ones here, and possibly this one here. These are the parallel blades. As you can see, some of them bigger than others. So, getting back to what is a burin? The burin is basically a hole-making device, a hole-making implement. It was used most likely to either perforate hides, make holes in shells, in wood, in bone, because in this time there's an explosion of artifacts, including even musical instruments towards the late period. They found, I think I've mentioned, they found a flute from a bird bone that was around 25,000 years ago. Yes, it's not directly Aurignacian, which I will discuss in the next episode, but it is direct descendant of this. They would make pendants by making holes in shells, in ivory, and in other materials. So the burins, like I said, these objects here, which had a point, some of them are wider than others, some of them are sharper. You know if it's a burin because the point is the actual, where the point is the thickest part of the flint blade. These are both, they all produce blades, but then they retouch them and make them into other artifacts. So these are the thickest part, so it'd be more durable to perforating. This time also there was the production of awls. What is an awl? An awl is basically a sewing needle, but not in the traditional sense that you thread the needle in the back part. No, they would perforate the hides and then stitch them up by tying. It's not the stitching that we know. It's a stitching that they tied them in sort of knots to produce clothing. After they treated the furs, they cured them, they softened them, because they can make them really supple by adding certain materials to make the hide supple. We know that because we've seen it through comparative archaeology, or anthropology, etc. And blades with marginal reshaping. Compared to earlier Paleolithic cultures, Aurignacian stone tools reflect an increasing number of end scrapers and an overall reduction in the resharpening of blades and the emergence of carnated and Dufour type bladelets. These are, I think these are these ones here. Just so you know how they're made, let's see, wrong. This is how they're made. You can see here the blade was removed from the core. They would obviously prepare the core, and then after each strike, always going around the core to remove the blades, and then they would retouch them and remake them into the tools that they wanted. So yes. Now, the Aurignacian stone tools are often made on non-local stone. especially in early assemblages, which they obtained from sources as far as 45 kilometers from where they were found by archaeologists. This means that they chose the materials that they wanted to work with. They were very, very specific materials. They wanted the best types, so they knew zones, areas where they were the best, and they would possibly trade. This could be an indication. There's no evidence of that, but there is evidence that of trade, obviously, because they've found obsidian artifacts and obsidian cores from in Europe, which the obsidian came from Eastern Europe and possibly even Western Asia. So there is trade. There was, or even in the Italian peninsula, the areas where there were volcanic areas, because obsidian is volcanic glass. Now, so they chose stone that was of the highest quality, even if that was further afield. So understanding the chronological development of the Aurignacian stone tools is hampered by the fact that most Aurignacian assemblages have comparatively low dense diversity indices and overall small sample sizes. So they are rarish. Archaeologists are trying to order them chronologically and order them in as well as classify them as well as they can. But there's just the sample size is just small. But so the shape of the base of bone projectile points is often used as a primary chronological marker instead, because at this point, like I said, the new development was stone tools, stone points, bone implements, and one of them was a bone projectile point. Bone is interesting because it is flexible and not as likely to break, especially if you throw it at an animal in a spear and use a stone point. If it hits a bone, cartilage, a bone, say, harder than your rib cage, it could shatter, whereas a bone as it's more flexible, it could embed itself, as with the stone tool, the stone point, but if it'll bounce back off and be slightly more durable. Of course, it's not as sharp, so there's always a drawback to that. So, for example, there's Aurignacian phases 1 to 4 are characterized by split, forked, beveled, and unmodified bases. So they're using the cores as a chronological classification, temporal classification of the phases. So. The geographical distribution of the Aurignacian culture ranges from the classical manifestations in continental Europe, especially in France and in Spain. There's a lot of Aurignacian sites there, and as the name comes from a French town called Saint Aurignacian something. I can't remember. I'm sorry, guys. And to perhaps pre and proto-Aurignacian in the Levant, that's in Israel area. The Zagros is in Turkey, the Zagros Mountains, which divides Syria and Turkey, and Iraq, yeah. To the Caucasus and Central Asia. Far from an in-situ European development, archaeologists now think that the Aurignacian culture may likely descend from one of these eastern core areas and appeared in Europe through relative late population movements. Most likely, possibly, it's a hypothesis. They are testing it out. The more sites we find, the more Aurignacian assemblages, etc. we find, the better and clearer it'll become. Now, the Aurignacian populations were organized into small nomadic hunter-gathering bands that probably occupied a territory of less than 200 square kilometers. Yes, that's the 200 square kilometers, the site catchment of that band. A band is an extended family. I think I've talked about this before. and the stratification, social stratifications of power, and how social the stratification of societies are. The band is the lowest, is after the individual. You have the individual, you have the family. Extended family is a band, where you have extended family and non-family members in there. It could be two families, for example, and that's how they would not. There would be a higher chance of not interbreeding, because they would have these outside genetic elements that would preclude genetic interbreeding. The settlement patterns, at least for the classic Aurignacians, were focused on river valleys in both open and rock shelter sites. That's why there's a lot of them in the Bourgogne area in France, near Bordeaux, the southwest France. That's where a lot of the research comes from. There's internal site patternings that was documented at a series of open sites in the Hornad River in the former Czechoslovakia, and consisted of multiple variable-shaped features and post holes. It was hypothesized that these were the remains of structures with internal heaths. Yes, Dolní Vlčenice is a famous site in the Czech Republic, and they've discovered that was more or less Aurignacian. It covers that time period. They found their pottery, ivory workings, and it was not a cave; it was a structure, sort of like a longhouse, possibly made with what were called tusks from the mammoth tusks, and also the hides, because they were mammoth hunters in that area. There's not a lot of caves in Central Europe, especially in the Czech Republic, etc. There is in more south, for example, in the Alpine areas, Alps, etc. But in other areas, it's quite. If you go further north, it's quite flat. Flat-ish, and there's not a lot of caves. So this one is a really particular site, a really good site, Dolní Vlčenice. Now, paleoenvironmental data indicate that the early Aurignacians was marked by a cold, dry, and open steppe-like environment, sort of like northern Canada, Alaska, Siberia, more or less like that, but without as many trees, obviously. Whereas the late Aurignacians saw a warm, wet, and forested environment. So there was a lot of swings. It was in between. The period that this covers was in between a small interstadial, and just before, after the peak of this culture, the 20,000 years, that last glacial maximum hit around the 22,000 years. Then it began to warm up, and we're in one of the interstadials now. So, for example, the Vézère Valley of southwestern France, a number of burins, like I said, thick scrapers increased in late assemblages, which is argued to reflect the adaptation to the change in type of distribution of plants and animals. They basically there was this period of time was huge environmental fluxes. The glaciers were retreating and advancing quite rapidly, and it was a really big period of environmental instability. So they were adapting, and it was reflected in their stone tools. Scrapers mean that they were treating hides a lot, and the plants and wood, etc. That was associated with the acquisition of highly mobile animals, horses and aurochs, instead of, say, the mammoths in Eastern, Northeastern Europe. where is the more generalized food getting strategy in later Aurignacian a result of as an array of diverse, less mobile fauna became locally available. So the fauna they shifted depending on how the climate was, from hunting nomadic animals to more local stationary stationary animals that didn't migrate. So this period also marked the beginning of a huge explosion in art. And it is very important. There's examples of decorated bones, antlers. I've included the link to art, so we shall see it now. And as you can see, the cave paintings, Sochaux in France, in Asturias, you have also a lot of art in the Asturian caves. They also, like I said, they also made a lot of art, mobile art. And let's see if we can open this up. How can we? Come on, let's. Yes, okay. I hate this. Except for the paintings, you also have this, which is the tiger man. Possibly, no, it's not the Black Panther because it's the head of a lion, not a panther. You have a Venus, what you call a Venus, and a horse. And bison, you can see the bison. This is in number one. Let's see, number one is a Chauvet cave. Yes, the Holsten Stadel lion man. Reduce that. The Volgenherd, number three is the Volgenherd horse, and the Galgenberg figurine, possibly a Venus figurine type. There was a lot of those in this period of time. Here's some a carving, a stone carving. I hope this doesn't get me demonetized, but as you can see here, the stone carving in rock. This is a Venus, Mother Nature type. What they believed in. We have here the Venus of Willendorf. A small zoomorphic picture in a stone slab. That's from Africa. These are the contemporary, all these. In Australia, like I said, you have the Bradshaw rock paintings. They're all more or less contemporary, around the 40,000 year mark, later than that. But this link is in the description. Feel free to have a look. There are nice pictures there. And this one is let's go to the site. This is a famous one. Where is it? Come on. Oh, it's not here. La Chaux, here's La Chaux in France. Caved bone engravings in bone implements from Laugiri-Basse. This one's interesting. Figure 4. See if it can show the figure 4. This is a spear thrower, an adeladdle, I think it's called, where it was used to increase the range of throwing a spear and power. Here you can have one like a horse, and the A is a couple of animals, and also the figurine of a horse carved from another thing. So yeah, there's a lot of this one comes from Dolny Vicinicia, the Czech Republic, and one I was telling you guys about. This is an ivory. So yes, let's get back to the article. Now, there again, the blocks have been found in Aurignacian site in Spain and southwest France. Some French caves contain geometric configurations such as chevrons, crosses, and parallel lines, animal figurines, and possible human form, as are known from the German site of Vogelherd. These data are often taken as evidence of Aurignacian symbolic system. Yes, possibly. We don't know what they mean, but they had some symbolism to the people who produced them, though their actual meaning remains enigmatic. We cannot even imagine what they meant to the people, because they are very, very, very personal to the band and the people that lived in that time, and etc. So I would never try to presume what they meant. Put it that way. So it comes from Cueva Morin in Spain, where complex burial rituals was documented. Yes. This site is unique because it contains 4 burials, which Morin 1 is the best preserved. Instead of skeletal remains, the natural casts of the bodies were found, because this area is very basaltic, granitic, so the bones would not be preserved very well in this area. And like other areas of Spain, like to the east in Burgos, in the Atapuerca site, where you have superb preservation because it's more acid based. It's more calcareous type, calcium based. So it's base general earth, so it preserves bones better. The natural cast. The Kevlar excavations of Morin 1 show that the individual was buried on his back in an extended position. The body appears to have been mutilated, with the head and feet completely removed. The quartzite blade were found undisturbed near the head, and the large animal was placed on top of the torso, with a small animal was placed over the legs. The burial pit was then filled and mounded with earth, sprinkled with red ochre. It's a natural pigment. It's iron oxide, and was set afire. It is postulated that these burial practices persisted for some time. Perhaps they are not disturbed by later occupations of Cueva Morin. The Aurignacian culture began to diminish around 27,000 years before the present, and eventually disappeared completely, as local variants were replaced by the Gravettian culture during the Upper Paleolithic period. And that is what we will talk about next time. So there we go. This time I'm not going to rage quit. Well, it wasn't a rage quit. I just hit the wrong button last time. So yeah, everyone, thank you for coming along, guys. Hello, Alfred. Thank you for being here, mate. So till next time, thank you, Davey. You're always a pleasure having you here, mate. So thank you guys for being my guests, and we will end it here for today. Thank you all until next time.